All right, listen, I'm joining the podcast space. Everyone has a podcast, so I decided to join. In all seriousness, I've been wanting to do this for a while, but I'm excited about this. And we're not talking about what men should be and what women should be and how to start a business. We're not talking about any of that. We're talking about something more important to me. This podcast is for creatives. We're focusing on everything that happens after the gig, which is the name. So, welcome to the podcast. Enjoy. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the podcast, man. Welcome, Chris. Thank you, bro, for coming out.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, so the way we're going to get this started, I got to read kind of through the dictionary of your accomplishments in this career,
Whatever.
right? So bear with me. This might be the whole podcast right here, but I picked through some of them. All right. So you're a composer, film scorer, Grammy nominated, and a band leader. Shout out Vertical Current.
Yeah.
So you have worked and been featured alongside people such as John Legend, Alicia Keys, Nas, right? Sampled on his album. Jasmine Sullivan, Tye Tribbett, Mary J. Blige, Diana Ross. It doesn't stop. Actor in the movie musical La La Land, right? TV appearances, Kelly Clarkson Show, The Voice, The Tonight Show, The Ellen Show, BET Award Show. And you're here with me today. Thank you, bro. I appreciate
Man, we don't get out of here. We're not reading your resume back, so this is not even
It'll
fair.
be short.
Whatever,
It'll
man.
be short. Nah, bro, I'm really grateful to have you here, man. We have great talks, and everyone that's on the podcast are people that I respect and admire because we just have we've done life together. You know what I mean? And I used to say this to a few friends. I think creatives, they do a good job doing projects together, but not always doing life together. You know, you've been in a situation, you pull up and you're like, hey, what's up, bro? Everyone's bro. What's up, bro? What's up, bro? And then no one knows anything about anyone.
Very true.
And people are struggling. So, which kind of segues into today's topic for us is mental health for creatives, which is a personal one for me, having kind of like a battle with that in my life. You know what I mean? And I want to read these stats before we get started, which is really crazy. So in 2020, a survey was done. 62% of people reported experiencing some degree of anxiety. That's not surprising because the world was falling apart, right? It is estimated that 264 million adults around the globe have anxiety. That was in 2017. I'm pretty sure it might be more now. But I think the staggering number for me is 55% of adults with a mental illness receive no treatment. So I know that there's people watching us today and they're definitely struggling, without a doubt. Because you know how I know that? Because I remember being on gigs and I remember being super unhappy, very depressed, playing. And then I just kind of like swallowed it and just walked away from it. You know what I mean? Like just kind of like, okay, that's cool. Get the check, bounce. But not happy, not feeling present. My question for you is, one of my first questions, when was the moment that you kind of felt aware about mental health? You know what I mean? That you were kind of like, this is a thing. I didn't know that this was a thing.
The moment for me happened recently, actually. I would say really last year was kind of a breakthrough moment for me. I was doing John Legend's Vegas residency, and I was struggling through it because I was having some physical challenges, and that ultimately was affecting my performance. And I'm like, it's got to be perfect, you know? And so it's like, that feeling you get where everything in you just sinks to your gut and you just feel sick.
Right.
Like I was feeling that. And like I really had to have a conversation with myself, like, get it together. You can get through this. It's all right. You know, it's just a note. you missed a note in the intro. You'll live, you know what I mean? But I was like, man, hold on. I'm anxious. This is anxiety. finally was able to put a name to it. And
Right.
then I realized, I can trace this all the way back to my childhood. I've been feeling this way a lot
Mm.
for many years, and I just never thought that that was what it was, never really thought to put a name to it. And so I think that that was the major breakthrough, putting a name to what I had been feeling for most of my life,
Mm.
and then once that happened, then I felt empowered to actually kind of pray about it, because it was like, oh, well, God, this is anxiety. Can you help me with anxiety?
Right.
Can you help me focus now? Can you give me peace over this? As
Right.
opposed to just feeling like, oh, well, it's just, you messed up.
Right.
That's
Right.
all this
Right.
is. You messed up. It's like, no, it's bigger than that. Lots of
Right.
people mess up. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
I've been playing for most of my life, and I've made many mistakes on the band stage. I'm not a perfect musician, not a perfect person. Made many mistakes in life, but to look at those mistakes and feel like, oh, it's the end of the world,
Mm.
that's not how we're supposed to process that.
Right.
But that's how I was feeling.
Right. I
So
feel like the industry that we're in lends itself to that type of thinking, right? Because it's like next man up, and it can be very cutthroat in a sense,
Mhm.
and you get judged by just your next gig. Whatever you're doing at that moment, that's who you are. I'm not saying that that's right, but I understand that pressure. I remember, it's funny that you said that. I remember growing up, and um, I had a decent childhood, but we all have moments, you know what I mean? And I remember growing up and I was fine, but I would do like certain things to like cope with anxiety that I did not know was anxiety.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I think it was 15, 14, I got a call um, from someone that I love. They got taken advantage of.
Mhm.
And at that time, I didn't know that I had some form of OCD. So when that happened, I immediately just spun out of control. The craziest thing is I've always had those symptoms. I just could always manage it.
Mhm.
But when that happened, I couldn't kind of put it back in the box.
Sure.
And then at that moment, music didn't mean much to me at that point. I was like spiraling. The crazy thing, bro, I was still doing gigs.
Mhm.
Like I was still around people. Like, and no one knew. And I was like really spinning out of control to the point where I landed in the emergency room.
Mhm.
And the craziest thing about having any mental health issue, you're walking into the emergency room or to the doctors without any physical outward appearance that you're hurt. That so you're walking in, you drove yourself there,
Mhm.
you're walking in, you're checking yourself in, you're sitting down, and then you're talking to people. And I don't know how to communicate this with them. I got family around, so I feel weird, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, man, that was really tough. So I think you mentioned about, okay, once you found out what it was, you can kind of turn around and be like, all right, this is what I can do. Did you ever feel hesitant about sharing that with people that you were dealing with kind of some mental issues?
Um, Actually, no. Once I identified that that was what it was, that was kind of my next step. I talked to some of my friends on the bandstand. I talked to my wife.
Mm.
I might even talk to my parents a little bit about it, just because I was finally able to acknowledge it. It just felt like I could breathe.
Right,
I was
right,
like, oh, that's what's wrong with me. I didn't know. I couldn't figure it out. And that's a really kind of a scary thing, to be dealing with those things. Because, I mean, the listeners don't know yet, but when I was younger, I dealt with depression and suicide uh, a lot, really heavy. And I was like bullied in school, just dealt with a lot of different traumas and things in
mm,
life. And so um, just carrying all these things all these years and not knowing what to do about it or how to feel about it, and just always thinking that, wasn't good enough, and that just things would never change,
right,
sometimes. And for some reason, that moment of being able to say, "Oh, this is what I'm feeling. That's what that is."
right.
And I think part of it is just the times that we live in, because I'm an '80s child, and people weren't throwing around terms like anxiety. We weren't
Therapist,
talking about
weird.
yeah, we weren't talking about going to therapy or anything like that. And
Right.
so it just wasn't a part of my vocabulary. So I
Right.
didn't have the words. I didn't have the language for what I was feeling. So I think that that is very important, just having the language for it, to be able to say that, oh, this is what that's called. And when you're feeling that, now you're able to trace, oh, well, so and so went through this, and that was that, and this is what they did about it. Or I talked to so and so, and I told them, and now they know what I'm talking about because I was able to put a name to it, as opposed to just all these, you know, symptoms, like
Right.
random
Right.
symptoms. Like, I can't really diagnose what the problem is.
Right.
You have a headache, okay? Like, drink some water. It's like, no, you have a headache because you have high blood pressure. Oh, you have high blood pressure. It's a different prescription I got to give you for that.
Right.
So
Right.
I think that that was just major for me.
Bro, that first of all, I have to applaud you because this happened recently, right?
Oh yeah.
So when my I guess enlightenment period of having a mental kind of block, what was happening for me was a little earlier in my life.
Mhm.
I mean, by early, I mean like probably 10 years ago. And I wasn't like that. I was actually ashamed.
Mm.
And I can't think back clearly all the way to why I was ashamed, but I think it was because in my community, um, I just took on the identity of being like, I was known for being excellent in a lot of things. Like, so if you called me for a gig, I'm gonna have everything right. Um, and I did that because that's how I was raised,
Mhm.
but also that perfectionism, in a sense, kind of like was a double-edged sword for me. So when I found out that I had anxiety, I wrestled with it, man. Yo, bro, I prayed so hard. I, I, I was praying hard, and my prayers were, at the time, looking back on it, were incomplete. They were like, God, can you please just take this away from me? I know you have the power to do so, right? I know you have the power to do so. He didn't.
Mhm.
And I want to encourage, I think, Christians who are creatives and creatives alike, but Christians who have mental health issues, if don't stop praying, right? But the way God chooses to heal you is up to him. And I think for me, it was more important to find out the root of the issue rather than him just being like, 1, 2, 3, it's done.
Mhm.
Because if I don't know what the root of the issue is, and then I'm just like ultimately better, I'm going to go back to it at some point. There was years of rigorous kind of like, this is what you do, ideologies, this is how you figure it out, this is what you do. And there wasn't that much grace. And I think during that process of my shame, bro, I was driving to outpatient clinics
Mhm.
and to go see a doctor, and there were people who could not dress themselves. People walking around the room, they couldn't sit down, making all weird sounds, and I'm there. You want to talk about humility? Not that I'm better than them, but I just felt like people think mental illnesses or health issues are like that, but not like high functioning.
Mhm.
So I applaud you. I don't know how you did that, but I applaud you because I remember what it felt like being embarrassed to say like something's wrong with me. But I'm not in the cast, right?
Mhm.
All right, bro, here's the thing that really blows my mind about you. You had anxiety or depression your whole life, right? Or you battled with it.
Mhm.
But you were wildly successful and you're wildly successful in your career. That is like the duality in that
Mhm.
is nuts. Like I guess you can't really explain it, but just talk about that. You're on the biggest stage that a lot of musicians want.
Mhm.
They really want that. You're at the pinnacle.
Yeah.
Like you're at the Grammys this year.
Mhm.
You're at the as a nominee. You're at the pinnacle, right?
Mhm.
Explain that to me. Like,
I think the best way to explain it is maybe to tell you that I tore my Achilles this summer,
mm,
well, last summer on tour, and I'm still healing from it, still going through physical therapy, and so I bring that up to say that it would have been nice if it would have just been like, oh, I just rolled my ankle and I hopped along for like a week and then I was fine, but it's not been that. It's been months. And I
Mm.
still, according to the doctor, may have some months to go
Wow.
before it's like normal. And then he's still talking like another year. I'm like, dude, stop talking. Don't say nothing else. But the point is that it's a process.
Right.
And so I think that it's the same thing. It's like, sure, God could have just kept me from all the bad things,
Mm-hmm.
and he's kept me from a lot, honestly. But he could have kept me from all the things that, hurt me and that made me feel depressed and suicidal and all that stuff. But I think it was the process of getting to know him through those things, of the people that those scenarios kind of brought me into their presence, um, all of that, it's a part of it. So if we don't have to go through anything, you're just stagnant, like those issues are the friction that moves us forward in
Mm-hmm.
life. So sometimes we have to go through those different things. And so God has blessed me in that I'm I'm full of hope
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
now,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and so what I have been led to do is when I have felt overwhelmed by those feelings, I always try to turn it into something positive. So, like anybody that knows my band Vertical Current, I have a song called Tomorrow, which is a
Mm.
song that I wrote during a season where I was feeling depression pretty heavily. That, and if you're a Tye Tribbett fan, there's a song I wrote on the Fresh album called Holding On, which I wrote at the same time as Tomorrow.
Mm.
Um, and rather than like write a really down song about how sad I am and how bad things are, I felt, led to and was hearing the words and the music to these hopeful songs. And so that's kind of been the trend in my life, to take the negatives and try to turn them into positive, try to use it for good. It's
Right.
like, hey, I've been dealing with such and such, talking to somebody about it. I'm not usually prone to talking about it for the sake of, hey, help me.
Right.
Because, yeah, I
Right.
feel you. I felt embarrassed about a lot of things. But if it was like, oh, if me telling you about it might help you, then cool. And so I feel like that's kind of been the progression of my life more so. So the success or whatever, that's all God. I had nothing to do with that. He just gave me favor with people, and I would just end up in rooms, end up doing all kinds of things. And if I look back over the history, it's been like something special in every era of my life. My life
Right.
seems to have been in all these different segments,
Right.
and it feels like such a long life. I'm only 40, but it's packed, full of so many wonderful experiences um, that counter all the negative experiences. So I
Right.
think that it's just been that balancing act of taking the negatives and trying to turn them into positives, letting the things that feel like they want to tear me apart drive me closer to him, as opposed to letting it pull me away. Because I know a lot of people, and friends of mine, we went to the same church and the church fall apart, and it's like, oh man, they're not believers anymore, and it's like it's
Right.
heartbreaking. It's
Right.
like, and I'm not judging them for it. That's the crossroads that we find ourselves at. I'm
Right.
just really grateful that God helped me stay on the path, and that there are people in my life that helped me stay on the path.
Yeah.
you know but that's where we find ourselves, this scenario of, this happened, now what do I do about it? Do I give up or do I keep going? If I keep going, it seems like an impossible feat. If I give up, it seems like the easy way out. But honestly, giving up is just more familiar,
Right.
but it's not a better solution.
Right.
you know it's nothing good about giving up. There's nothing even enticing about giving up, really. It's just the hope that it'll be over sooner. But
Mm.
anybody who's given up probably knows already that that's not really true. And I've
Right.
tried that. I've tried that a couple times. I've tried giving up.
Wow.
I did try giving up. I remember I was a younger man, much younger, and I tried to in my life, and unsuccessfully, thank God.
Yeah.
But it was nothing better about that attempt. It didn't make things better, and I don't know. There's been other things that I've dealt with and struggled with, and it was like, all right, you know what? I can't beat this guy. I'm just going to give into it, and just, it's like, I hate this.
Right.
There's nothing
Right.
good about this. So to anybody that's listening or watching now, if you feel like giving up, you feel like, your pain is too much, the struggle's too much, trying to do good, trying to do right is too much, trying to get my mind together is too much. The opposite, giving up, giving into it is not better. It won't be better. You won't enjoy it. You think you will. You think it's going to be more fulfilling, but it's just a endless cycle of pain, and it's not better. But what is better, and this is what I learned. I was in college at Berkeley. That's when I first went to school, and I was crossing just like this little overpass, just like Boylston and Mass Ave or something like that. And I was having really crazy thoughts. I was depressed, and I like was thinking about like climbing over the gate and like throwing myself in the traffic, which is
Wow.
really dark, right? But I heard God, and I can't say that it's like, all right, I'm always hearing, clearly, but that time I know that I heard clearly. And what I heard was basically that you don't control this, and that you won't be ending things. You know what I mean? Like, you will still exist. There's still more. And that you would be better off trusting me and just going through life with me, you know. And so that was the real turning point for me in terms of my depression and suicide and everything. And
Mm-hmm.
so fast forward to when I wrote Tomorrow, which is like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years after that. And I'm feeling heavy because of some things going on in life. And it's
Right.
like, God gave me a song instead. It's like, oh man. So just the beauty of going through those things that's my answer,
Yeah.
really. I know it's
Yeah.
kind of a long-winded way to say it, but the success and everything good that's come out of it has just been that I've always been drawn back to him to get through it. I
Yeah.
couldn't do it on my own. And that's probably the only way I've been able to do it and navigate it without the help of a therapist.
Mm.
Because I have not had the experience of having psychological counseling,
Mm-hmm.
but having gone through this injury and having physical therapy and just seeing how much that helps, and how much they've kept me on track for healing
Yeah.
at a proper time. I'm like, man, it probably helps people get better mentally so much quicker and helps them heal so much more completely to actually have somebody who knows what they're talking about to
Right.
say, hey, you need to do X amount of push-ups today mentally, you know what I
Right.
mean? So that muscle, doesn't remain strained. Otherwise, we can get lazy. We don't want to do the hard things. We don't want to do the work, but there is work to be done. There are hard things that we have to do to get on the other side of traumas.
Right.
And we all have traumas. This is just life, it's a fallen world. You can't
Yeah.
escape it.
Yeah.
So,
I want to touch on the point that you said. Man, you got me all in my feelings. You just,
man.
first of all, I'm grateful that the attempt didn't happen, that you failed at that, because I didn't know you at that time. Um, but you've been a brother to me, so you would have robbed me selfishly of the experience of knowing you if that happened. The late great Dr. Miles Monroe has this thing where he says, "Die empty,"
Mhm.
and I remember hearing it, and it really affected me. He was just saying, "Rob the grave."
Mhm.
He was also saying the richest place in the world is not what we think it is, not museums, not banks, it's the grave. And he was like, it's full of ideas, potential that people never accomplished.
Mhm.
And your accomplishments aside, who you are as a person, for me, is like, that's the richness of you, bro. Like,
Mhm.
like for real, so I'm glad that it didn't happen that way, and I'm glad we're sitting talking. Um, I just had to say that.
Thank you,
Yeah,
man. Me too.
yeah. So I'm in therapy, or I took the therapist route.
Mhm.
At first, I had a counselor, a Christian counselor, and that was great. And that was like when the event happened to me, like in 2015, 16, whenever it was, 14 or something like that. Then the pandemic hit. Man, I was scared of everything. I was like, because like with OCD, you're already battling with control.
Mhm.
So like they're like, yo, you got to stay in the house. I'm maxed up. I got 6 masks on. I'm about to just end my own life by carbon monoxide because
Oh,
obviously I
goodness.
can't breathe. So, um, but I remember that time being really scared. So I connected with a therapist, and I've been with that person ever since. So it's now been almost 3 years. And you're right. It's like week in, week out, we're working, keeping up. Even when I have good like even though I'm good, like there's no emergency, I've learned it's better to build and to sustain without an emergency. I think what happens a lot of time with mental health is like sometimes we wait until things get really bad to get some help, right? But for me, like I don't wait for my car to get really bad to take it into the mechanic. Now, when I was broke, I wait till that thing was really
Fair enough.
before I took it to the mechanic. But joking aside, like I'm not going to wait because that's actually going to cost me more if I'm riding on something that's broken. You know what I mean? So now I'm more of like, life is great. Life is good. I'm matured. I'm watching what I put into my body. I'm meditating. But also at the same time, I'm like, I want to keep it good. Because one thing I know about it, in 2019, December 31st, 2019, when we crossed over into 2020, no one really knew 3 months later that we were going to be in a shutdown. Now, this is not to scare people, but one thing I know, you're 40, right? I'm going to be 34. Life is going to life. Life be lifing. You're going to have life. It's going to happen. You can't escape it. And this is not to scare people or to fearmonger, but that's just a reality of life. So for me, it's better for me to be like, okay, if life is unexpected, which is okay, I know God is who God is, and I know I need him forever, right? And I want him and I desire him. There are also tools in which that I know for myself I need to use because I just want to make sure I'm prepared no matter what happens. So I think there's two ways to go about it, or many ways, really honestly, to go about it, just as long as you're getting the help that you need. That's the biggest one. Also, I have to give you flowers, man, because you didn't let your identity is not in your music, and that's very clear. Like you don't wear what you've done with a badge of honor as if you're an untouchable, which is like remarkable because when someone like gets to that level, they can kind of be arrogant sometimes or hard. Like you just lose this human connection with them. But the fact that you're like saying who you played for, but also you're just like, yeah, that's cool, and I love that, and I'm grateful for that. But this is real life stuff. To me, there's beauty in that. I'm gonna ask you this question, bro. So, what's your? I know you gave some nuggets right throughout your whole time of actually just telling us your experience. But if you had to say anything for creatives that are dealing with mental health issues, what are your thoughts about that? What's your advice to them?
What's my advice? Well, if you if you don't pray, I would say definitely start doing that. Additionally, it's okay to be honest. You may not be able to do that with every single person that you meet, but
Facts.
have, a close circle. It may be one person, it may be two people. That's fine. But people that you can be truly honest with about what you're feeling, and that you can get your thoughts completely out. That's not going to talk all over you too. That's important. I have that in my wife. I have that in my parents, and I have a couple close friends, yourself included, that I can, kind of spill my guts to, and then sometimes just talking about it helps. You don't always need to get an answer.
Wow. Yeah.
Sometimes you just need to get it off your chest.
Yeah. That's so true.
So that's where I would start. But you said something too about being prepared beforehand, and I think of it like this: it's like having accounts. If you wait till you need money to put money in your bank account, like where's this money coming from?
Right.
You have to store it up. So you store up tools that you need, for your mental health. You store up the tools that you need for your physical health. You store up the tools that you need for your creativity. It's all about investment. So if you need a therapist, that's an investment that you're making yourself, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think the fact that you had one and I didn't is more a sign of our generational gap. You know what I mean? Because you're a little bit younger than me, you grew up in more of a time where there was language for it and it was a little more commonplace.
Right.
And I feel like the people that are under you is going to be even more normal for them to talk about. Like, I won't use her name, but there was an artist, she was supposed to go on tour. She decided to cancel the tour because she had she
Right.
needed to focus on her mental health.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we just never would have done that. The artists I grew up listening to probably needed to do that, but it just wasn't commonplace. So
Right.
it's more common now. So if you're of my generation or older, it's cool. You can do it. And if you're younger, like still same thing, like do it, get the help you need. And if you don't have access to that, again, I still subscribe to prayer. I
Yeah.
have learned a tremendous amount through just going through life with God.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's either something in his word or something that, is revealed to me in prayer or something that someone may speak
Yeah.
to me, you know what I mean? And I may never even have come across that person if I was not walking the path
Right.
obediently. I
Right.
might have missed that opportunity to talk to somebody, so I'm talking to somebody and I'm bringing up something that has nothing to do with anything. And now all of a sudden we're talking about this thing.
Right.
It's like, oh, I needed to hear that. I didn't even know that you were the person I need to hear it from, but
Yeah.
there's the answer. So just be open, to the fact that God knew before it ever was a thing. You know what I mean? Like before he even made humanity, he made an answer for
Right.
everything.
Right.
And so there's a ram in the bush. If you don't know what I'm referring to, there's a story of a man, Abraham is supposed to sacrifice his son. He obeys God, goes to a
Yeah.
mountain. God doesn't tell him which mountain to go to.
Yeah.
Not at first anyway. He just starts walking and then he gets directions.
Wow.
He gets to the mountain. He has his son. He's ready to make the sacrifice. Angel says, don't do it. God sees your heart. He knows you're obedient. He knows that you would do it. This is far enough. Ram in the thicket. Sacrifice this instead. And
Man,
so it's like,
I just had this thought.
what's up?
I think sometimes people don't get the help that they need. We're talking socioeconomically, like that aside, because I know that's a big thing.
Sure.
Maybe some people don't get the help that they need because they're not willing to take that walk up that mountain.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. Like when you said he didn't tell him what mountain, but he knew that he had to go.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know how I'm going to figure this out, but at least I need to go in the direction of where God told me to go in. Yeah,
Just start, man.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part sometimes, to just starting.
Absolutely.
So he started, he gets there. There was provision is the point that I'm trying to make, is that there was an answer already made for him. So there's an answer for you, whatever you're going through, I don't know if this is supposed to be a Christian podcast or not.
Well, it's a faith-based podcast. We're
okay.
both Christians.
So I can
everything is
talk
through the
about-
lens of yeah.
So Daniel, you know what I mean? He prayed. Bible says God heard him as soon as he prayed, but his answer was held up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then God sent his angel to fight for the answer to get to him.
Right.
So there's things going on that we don't see, that we're not aware of, or whatever that are happening. Seeds grow in the dark, they grow underground. That's the way life happens. And so there's always something at work that we may not be aware of, but God heard you when you first prayed. God knew about it before it was even a problem. There's an answer already prepared for you. So I just want everybody to have that hope, just to know that it's not like God is trying to figure out a solution real quick. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like it's a rush for you.
Like he's up there
You're
scrambling.
late getting to this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You just figured out it was an issue.
Wow.
He already knew. He already had an answer. He already had a plan. So if you trust him, that gives me peace. I hope that will give you peace as well. But yeah, the long and the short of it is just don't try to do it on your own.
Yeah.
Because we're not built that way. It's not how we're meant to be.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to do it on our own. Even for those who have faith and pray all the time, it's still not just supposed to be just you and God.
Right.
It was Adam and God, and he was like, yo, this ain't no good.
Right.
It's not good for man to be alone. I'm not alone.
Right.
I got you, God. Like,
Right.
no, I'm gonna make a help me for you. I'm gonna make a woman. Like,
Right.
God saw the necessity of peopling, and we don't like to people. Like you mentioned, I don't know if the cameras are rolling yet, but you were saying how like sometimes in the musician community or in the creative community, when we're working together, everything is cool, but we don't really do life together. So we don't know each other like that personally. We're not communicating on that level. But the peopling aspect, that's another key to success. You want to know how to be successful? People well. If you can't people well, you're not going to go very far. But if you learn how to people well, and that's not even a thing about manipulating. It's just learning to get along with people, learning to communicate with people, learning to be a person that is helpful.
Right.
Don't just be out there to get, you know what I mean?
Right.
And that will help in the overall process. If we people better, we'll have success, and we will be able to manage circumstances better. You know,
Yeah.
there's a million examples I can give you out of the Bible or just out of everyday life, just of how peopling helps. But
Thank you, bro.
that's an essential key, in my opinion.
Thank you. So what camera? Can I look into this one? I want to talk to.
You want to talk to the camera?
I want to talk to creatives.
Talk to that camera. Yep.
Hi, creative. Listen, this is the wrap up thought. I think we've heard a lot here. I think it's been very instrumental. I hope that you're leaving this podcast with at least some tools for your next step. One of the things I wanted to say to you, and me and Chris were talking about this before the cameras were rolling, is that what I don't want you to do, if in my humble suggestion, is that I don't want you to take your gifting, your ability, and then let that distract you from actually getting the help that you need. And this is what I mean by that. I remember at that time, I was doing like 3 and 4 gigs a week, but I knew that something was wrong. But I was telling myself, if I could only get to this level, that suddenly life will get better. And then you just heard someone at the highest level just say, hey, when I was on the bandstand, playing probably in front of thousands of people, I had a real life issue. So wherever you go, your mental goes with you. It doesn't just like drop off and you pick it back up. So no matter what success you have or the heights you have, your mindset is going with you. And that's why it's important for you at this moment to actually handle your mindset now, so it doesn't hinder you wherever you have to go. I love you. I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you in the next one. Yeah. We cut? Should I clap again?
All right, bro.
Thank you, bro.